It was a chilly Monday morning in downtown Chicago when Daniel stepped into the lobby of the sleek high-rise office building. The polished floors gleamed under the soft fluorescent lights, and the scent of fresh coffee wafted through the air. Daniel was just another face in the crowd, a mid-level accountant on his way to another routine day. He adjusted his tie, feeling a mix of hope and anxiety about the week ahead. As he approached the elevator, the doors slid open, revealing an empty space within. He stepped inside, hit the button for his floor, and sighed. The usual hum of the elevator was comforting. It was the kind of sound that made the world outside feel far away. But then, just as the doors were about to close, he saw her. A woman with striking red hair rushed towards the elevator, her arms loaded with folders and a coffee cup wobbling precariously in one hand. Daniel's instinct kicked in. He pressed the open button just in time. She exclaimed, a mix of relief and gratitude washing over her face as she entered the elevator. "Not a problem," Daniel said, offering her a friendly smile. He admired her determination. She looked like someone who had her life together. She had that professional air, like she meant business. As the elevator began its ascent, the silence hung thick in the air. Daniel could feel a strange energy between them, a crackling kind of tension that made his heart beat a little faster. He stole glances at her as she organized her papers. Her brow was slightly furrowed in concentration, and he wondered what kind of work she was juggling. He asked, trying to break the silence. "Yes, actually, I just started last week," she replied, glancing up at him. Her green eyes were bright and curious. "I'm in marketing. Accounting, not as exciting, but it pays the bills," he said, chuckling softly. Their laughter melted the tension, and for a moment they were just two people sharing a small space. The elevator stopped again on the 4th floor, and the doors opened. An older gentleman stepped in, pushing the button for the 10th floor. The woman smiled politely at him, and Daniel noticed her posture shift. She seemed to visibly relax in the presence of the stranger. The old man nodded at them. "Morning," he said, his voice gravelly from years of experience. "Morning," Daniel and the woman echoed, but then just as the door slid shut, the old man suddenly turned to them, his eyes narrowing. "You two ought to be careful. First impressions count." Daniel felt a prickle of unease. Who was this man? He was just a stranger in an elevator, but his words hung in the air like an unwanted cloud. The woman looked slightly uncomfortable, but nodded in acknowledgement. Elevator continued climbing, the air feeling heavier. Daniel glanced at the display above the doors and then at the woman beside him. Her expression had shifted to one of concern, as if she too sensed an underlying tension. Before Daniel could say something to lighten the mood, the elevator jolted abruptly and then stopped with a shudder. The lights flickered and then stabilized again. Great, Daniel thought, stuck in an elevator, with a stranger and a man who seemed to think he was an oracle of wisdom. The woman said, her voice tinged with anxiety. "I think we might be stuck," Daniel replied, trying to keep his tone light despite the tightening in his chest. She said, attempting to smile, though her eyes betrayed her distress. "Yeah, just sit tight. I'm sure they'll get us out soon," he reassured her, but he wasn't sure if he believed it himself. The older man leaned against the wall, crossing his arms, seemingly unbothered by the situation. Minutes ticked by. Daniel tried to strike up a conversation, but there was a lingering tension between them, like they were trapped in a bubble that seemed to grow thicker by the second. The old man remained quiet, occasionally glancing at his watch, clearly impatient. Suddenly, alarm lights began flashing above them. Red beams pulsed, and a faint, crackling voice came over the intercom. "Elevator 5 is experiencing technical difficulties," Daniel scoffed under his breath. The woman let out a nervous laugh, and for just a moment it felt as if that strange tension was loosening. She asked, her voice small. "Of course," Daniel replied, even though he wasn't entirely convinced. As more minutes passed, Daniel felt a knot tightening in his stomach. The weight of uncertainty pressed down on them. It was amazing how quickly a normal day could turn into something surreal. They were strangers, yet shared this moment, trapped together in a metal box high above the ground. Finally, the elevator jolted again, and the doors creaked open, revealing the shocked faces of startled employees from the lobby. They seemed more interested in the strange sight of 3 people emerging from a malfunctioning elevator than in offering help. A young woman asked, rushing forward. Daniel stepped out first, glancing back at the woman. "Yeah, we're fine," he said, more to reassure her than to address the crowd. The woman smiled at him gratefully as they made their way to safety. But before they could step fully out of the elevator, the older man stepped forward, his expression a mix of irritation and authority. "You should learn to wait your turn," he admonished, directing his stern gaze at both of them. Daniel was taken aback. Hadn't they all just been through the same ordeal? "We were just trying to get out," he replied, a hint of disbelief in his voice. The man continued to glare, and Daniel felt the woman stiffen beside him. "Right," Daniel said, noting the tension in her voice. Together, they walked toward the exit, leaving the old man behind with his scowl. The air outside felt liberating, filled with fresh possibilities. They took a moment to breathe deeply, both grateful to be free. "Thanks again for holding the elevator," she said, finally relaxing. "I'm really not used to all this yet." "No worries, it was the least I could do," Daniel replied, feeling a warmth spreading through him. Emily, she said, extending her hand. As they shook, a spark flew between them, a connection neither expected. I hope your day gets better, he said, wishing he could learn more about her, not just in passing moments, but in a real way. Maybe after my first week we could grab coffee, celebrate my survival, she teased with a twinkle in her eye. I'd like that, he said, his heart racing. It felt surreal, like a movie had suddenly come to life. As they exchanged numbers, the lobby manager approached them. A tall woman in a crisp suit stepped forward, her brow furrowed with concern. I apologize for the inconvenience. Daniel spoke up. Honestly, we're just glad to be out, but the old man seemed a little. The manager's face turned serious. She turned to Emily and said, you have nothing to worry about. As they walked away, Emily turned to Daniel, a thoughtful look on her face. It's not too bad, except for the occasional elevator drama, he joked. Emily laughed. It was a beautiful sound, light and genuine, but behind her laughter he sensed a thread of anxiety. Daniel pressed, eager to keep the conversation flowing. It's exciting. Honestly, I'm just finding my footing. But I love storytelling. Her eyes lit up and Daniel found himself drawn in. He recognized that spark, the drive to delve deeper into connection and emotion. That sounds amazing, Emily chuckled. A little drama goes a long way in marketing. Minutes turned into longer conversations, both of them seeing in each other a flicker of vulnerability. But then the atmosphere shifted. Emily's phone buzzed violently in her pocket. Her expression instantly changed. I have to take this, she said, stepping aside. Her usual confidence dimmed for a moment as she spoke in hushed tones, almost frantic. Daniel felt helpless standing there, watching her and trying to piece together the sudden change. When she returned, her expression was taut and her shoulders were tense. Sorry about that, he asked gently. Emily sighed, then smiled bravely. Nothing I can't handle, it's just... Daniel nodded empathetically, recalling his own challenging experiences with bosses who didn't quite understand the pressures of life. As the day wore on, they shared stories, talked about their dreams and even their fears, his fear of failure, her fear of not being enough. In that short time, the space between them shrank, filled with understanding and a hint of magic. But amidst the laughter and the light-hearted banter, Emily's initial anxiety lingered like a shadow, reminding Daniel of the pressures they faced in their respective jobs. Then out of nowhere, the lobby manager approached them again. Excuse me, I just wanted to thank you both, she said, voice steady. You're both heroes for handling that situation well. From our side, we have to ensure safety. Emily looked surprised. You don't have to apologize, she said, her voice softening as she faced the manager. The manager smiled gratefully. But I want to, and also we've noticed your initiative during your time here, Emily. Emily's eyes widened. She looked at Daniel, disbelief dancing in her gaze. Absolutely, if you're willing, we see a lot of potential in you, the manager said warmly. Daniel felt a swell of pride for her. The respect and admiration he had felt for her earlier returned tenfold. The excitement in her eyes felt contagious as she turned to him. Thank you for believing in me. As the day ended, they walked out together. The city around them was alive, streets pulsing with lights and sounds. Yes, Emily said, a bright smile breaking through. As they exchanged stories amidst the glow of city lights, a new chapter began to unfurl. They were strangers who had been thrown together in a moment of uncertainty, but what emerged was more than just a shared elevator ride. It was a connection, one that was beginning to feel like something truly special. And in that city, amidst the buzz of life around them, they forged a bond. One that started with a simple act of kindness, holding the elevator door open, and transformed into something neither of them had expected. As they stepped into the future, the sounds of the bustling metropolis faded away, leaving just the two of them and the stories waiting to be written. The elevator door slid open with a soft chime just as Noah pressed the button again for the 10th floor. He had almost given up waiting, thinking, maybe I'll just take the stairs. He was late for a crucial meeting, a meeting that could change everything for him. Then he saw her. She was hurrying down the marble corridor, her heels clicking sharply on the floor, a briefcase bouncing against her side. Noah instinctively pressed the open button as she approached, just in time for her to slide through the doors before they closed. She gasped, a mix of relief and gratitude in her voice. A cascade of dark hair fell over her face as she hurriedly tucked it behind her ear, and Noah couldn't help but notice how her eyes sparkled with a resilience that radiated warmth. No problem, he replied, forcing a smile, though his mind raced with anxiety about his presentation. He could feel the urgency of time slipping away. The elevator lurched upward and the soft hum of the machinery enveloped them. As the floors ticked by slowly, the air inside the elevator thickened. Noah glanced sideways at the woman. She looked tense, her brow furrowed as she flipped through notes, her lips moving silently as if practicing her own speech for an unseen audience. He asked, trying to break the palpable silence. 10. Same, Noah said, feeling a rush of relief. Maybe this wouldn't be such a bad day after all, but then the elevator coughed and shook violently. The lights flickered before dimming. Noah's stomach dropped. Just his luck, he was stuck in an elevator sandwiched between a stranger and his mounting fears. No, 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 she whispered, her notes now crumpled in one hand. The tension in her shoulders was palpable, and he could almost feel it radiating between them like electricity. "Let's just breathe," Noah said, forcing calm into his own voice even as panic clawed at his insides. They had no idea how long they would be stuck. His heart pounded not only from anxiety but also from a strange urgency he felt to protect this woman who had so quickly captured his attention. She asked, her voice a mixture of worry and hope. "They'll find us," he assured her, though he wasn't so certain. He could feel every second dilate, every heartbeat echoing in the cramped space as they waited. Silence fell again, but it wasn't uncomfortable. Noah looked at her and saw vulnerability flicker across her face. "I'm Maggie," she finally said. "I'm trying to pitch a project that could mean a big step for me." Noah felt a spark of camaraderie. "I'm Noah, and don't worry." They shared a look, and in that moment the fear faded just a bit. She smiled, the warmth touching her eyes, and he felt something shift in the atmosphere. This was more than just a stuck elevator. It was shared vulnerability and human connection forged in a moment of chaos. But then the elevator lurched again, and the lights flickered back on. They were moving. Noah's heart raced with relief, but it was short-lived. Suddenly, the elevator ground to a halt, and the sound of their own breaths filled the air. Maggie's face dropped. "I think where he started," but before he could finish, a loud voice crackled through the intercom. "Elevator 5 is experiencing technical difficulties," she echoed, incredulous. You'd think they'd have better technology in a building like this. Noah understood all too well. The stakes felt sky-high, but he had a sense of duty to ease her worry. "Just take a deep breath," he urged, confidence gaining strength in his voice. "They'll have us out soon." She laughed lightly, but her eyes glimmered with unease. "Well, we could be," he smiled. He sensed that playing along would help lift her spirits. Maggie's laughter faded into a soft chuckle, and suddenly the air between them felt lighter. "Hey, let's not put the cart before the horse. We're still in here," he replied, his heartbeat echoing in his ears alongside the dull thrum of the elevator. In those tight quarters, they shared stories, their dreams woven into the fabric of their conversation. Maggie spoke of her aspirations, a spark igniting in her voice. Noah nodded, feeling inspired by her determination. "And you'll get it." She looked at him, and for a moment he caught a glimpse of someone who felt unseen yet brave enough to dream anyway. She asked, "Honestly, I just want to prove myself," he admitted, vulnerability creeping in. "Yeah, I know that feeling," she replied, her voice softening. They fell into silence again, but it was a comfortable one filled with understanding. But then, without warning, the elevator jolted, sending them crashing back to the here and now. The chaos of the last few minutes returned, and the fear clawed back. Noah's hands gripped the handrail as he looked over at Maggie. Everything's going to be okay. But even his own words felt hollow against the reality of their situation. He closed his eyes, wishing for the world beyond the doors to respond. Just then, the elevator doors creaked open a crack, revealing the shocked face of the building manager, a woman in a crisply tailored suit. She called, her voice almost frantic. Noah replied, relief flooding through him. The manager stepped inside, analyzing the scene. "You should both know that we have protocols for emergencies, but sometimes things go wrong. I apologize for the inconvenience." As he took in her professionalism, an unsettling feeling crept back. The door fully opened, and bright fluorescent lights flooded in, stark and blinding compared to the soft ambience inside the elevator. Noah stepped out, a wave of exhaustion crashing over him. Maggie followed, her expression a blend of gratitude and disappointment. "Thank you," she said, turning to the manager. As they stood in the lobby, the manager's gaze moved between them, her eyes sharp and calculating. Words lay unsaid, too heavy in the air. Then she turned toward Noah, her posture softening. "I must apologize for the old gentleman you encountered earlier. His attitude doesn't represent our values." Noah felt the weight lift ever so slightly. "It's understandable." Maggie shot him a grateful glance, a hint of admiration shining through. "Seriously, thank you for holding the door," she said, her voice earnest. Noah shrugged, but inside a warmth bloomed. Maggie smiled wide, the tension fading from her shoulders. "I will." As they exchanged numbers, the atmosphere between them shifted again, now filled with promise. Maybe this was just a chapter in the journey ahead, but somehow it felt like more than that. Unbeknownst to them, their morning had been a small spark igniting a story that had the potential to become something much larger. It wasn't just about being stuck in that elevator anymore. It was about connection in the face of uncertainty. As the minutes turned into moments, they stepped into the bustling world outside a stage where the possibilities stretched far beyond that steel box. "Let's turn this day around," Noah suggested, the streets bustling with life around them. "Agreed," Maggie replied, her eyes bright with determination. "Absolutely." They walked side by side, their conversations flowing easier now, like a newfound rhythm in a song they both wanted to sing. The challenges ahead danced before them, daunting yet filled with promise they were now willing to face together. And as the chaos of life swirled around them, they stepped into a future ripe with potential, their hearts unexpectedly open. In that moment, they were not just two strangers who had shared an elevator. They were allies, partners, and perhaps something beyond, ready to embrace whatever came next. Together, the elevator door slid shut just as Ethan pressed the button for the 15th floor, his heart racing with a mix of excitement and anxiety. He had landed an important job interview, one that could change everything for him. The weight of anticipation hung thick in the air as the elevator jolted and began its ascent. But before the doors fully closed, he heard a desperate shout. Swinging back open, the elevator revealed a woman, her briefcase in one hand, her other hand clutching the strap of her purse. Her face was flushed, a wild look in her eyes. Ethan instinctively pressed the open button again, heart racing faster than before. She gasped, stepping inside as the doors closed tightly behind her. The smell of her perfume wafted through the air, a delicate mix of jasmine and something fresh. "I thought I'd miss my meeting," she added, the panic slowly melting from her voice. "No problem at all," Ethan replied, feeling a warm rush. The elevator hummed softly and they exchanged quick glances, each sizing the other up. She was dressed sharply in a tailored suit, her dark hair pulled back into a neat bun that highlighted her striking features. There was an air of confidence about her that intrigued him. "Sarah," she introduced herself, her gaze meeting his, piercing yet inviting. "Ethan," he replied, and just like that, the tiny metal box became a stage upon which two strangers found themselves. As the floors disappeared beneath them, Sarah looked at him, eyes lively with curiosity. "I've got an interview with the marketing team," he said, trying to sound casual. "Same." Her voice held a vibrant energy, and Ethan felt a tinge of pressure in his chest ease. Maybe they were on the same journey. But before he could say more, there was a sudden jerk, an unsettling tremor that made the elevator shudder. The lights flickered ominously, and Sarah's confident demeanor faltered as panic streaked across her face. She stammered, her grip tightening on the briefcase. "No, Ethan started, but before he could finish, the elevator screeched to a stop. The lights dimmed and silence fell, thick and suffocating. Sarah's voice was barely a whisper now, uncertainty dripping from every syllable. Noah felt a cold rush of fear creep in. Instinct kicked in as he tried to remain calm for both of them. "I'm sure it's just a glitch." Minutes stretched into eternity, the weight of the cramped space closing in on them. The only sound was their breathing, quick and shallow, echoing as they shared glances filled with shared dread. Sarah whispered, anxiety lacing her words. "Sometimes it takes something like this to knock us out of our comfort zones," Ethan replied, attempting to inject a little humor into the tense atmosphere. She chuckled softly, the sound breaking through the tension. Fate, huh? Just as they were starting to breathe more easily, a loud crackling noise erupted from the intercom. Attention. Elevator 7 is currently experiencing technical difficulties. Ethan felt the weight of the words settle like a stone in his stomach. Murmurs of frustration echoed from outside the elevator, voices floating through the crack of the door, but the two of them remained cocooned in their metal prison. Sarah bit her lip, and with each passing moment he could see her confidence slip away like sand through fingers. She asked, voice tinged with panic again, "I hope so." "They can't just leave us in here," he said, trying to project calmness, and that's when it hit him. This was supposed to be a day of opportunity, a chance to shine in front of the higher-ups, and here they were trapped, waiting and growing increasingly anxious. "I thought today was going to be a milestone," Sarah said, the fire in her eyes dimming. "I get that," Ethan said, leaning in slightly. They locked eyes, and for a moment, felt like they weren't just two people stuck in a malfunctioning elevator. They were two souls laid bare, betraying the fear that brewed beneath their surface. The world outside faded, and nothing mattered except the strange connection forming between them amidst the uncertainty. More time passed, and with it, a heavy silence settled in. Just as despair threatened to creep back, the elevator suddenly jerked again, jostling them both. Then the doors rattled slightly, as if teasing them only to remain obstinately shut. Sarah whispered, a hint of a tremor in her voice. "Try and stay positive," Ethan urged, but even he wasn't sure if he believed that anymore. Suddenly, the elevator lurched again, and the lights flickered ominously. "Let's just try to breathe," he suggested, desperate to help her. Just then, another voice came through the intercom, more authoritative this time. "We are aware of the situation and working on getting you out," Sarah exclaimed, her voice echoing off the elevator walls. Ethan couldn't blame her. They were stuck, and the very system meant to keep people safe had betrayed them. Then, without warning, the elevator jolted violently one last time, creaked and rattled like an old machine before it ground to a complete stop again. Sarah asked, attempting to make light of the situation. Ethan chuckled lightly, despite the tense atmosphere. But before they could settle back into the camaraderie, another jolt shot through the elevator, and the lights flickered ominously, casting shadows that danced across their worried faces. "Seriously, we really need to get out of here," Sarah said, her frustration boiling over. She took a few deep breaths, trying to regain her composure. Ethan watched her, struck by how real and raw she was. As she glanced at him, he could see the recognition in her eyes. They were both vulnerable, both searching for a way to navigate through this chaos. Then suddenly, with a loud metallic grind, the elevator doors creaked open, spilling bright light into the enclosed space. Ethan squinted, adjusting to the sudden burst of brightness and the surprised faces staring back at them. A woman in a crisp business suit asked, stepping forward. The authority in her voice carried a weight. Sarah exclaimed, visibly relieved, "We were just stuck." The woman nodded, but before she could speak, an older gentleman stepped up, his brow furrowed with distaste. What on earth happened here? Ethan felt a rush of indignation. "Excuse me, we were stuck." The general manager brushed him off, focusing his attention on Sarah. "You should really keep better control over your time." Sarah retorted, her eyes flashing. "I was doing my best." Ethan interrupted, stepping between Sarah and the man. The manager's expression hardened. But just then the building manager cut in, her voice steady and measured. "I apologize for the disruptions. This was not the experience we want our employees to have." The general manager frowned but was silenced by the intensity in her gaze. "Both of you should be commended for your resilience." After a small pause, Sarah turned to Ethan. "Of course," he said, the warmth in his chest growing. What had started as a chaotic elevator ride morphed into something unexpected, an alliance born out of adversity. The building manager looked at Sarah and Ethan, her expression softening. "You both have incredible potential." "Thank you," Sarah said, her voice filled with renewed hope. As they exited the elevator together, something shifted between them. There was a connection that transcended the trouble they had faced. The fear and uncertainty faded, replaced by resilience and newfound determination. Outside, the city buzzed to life around them, cars honking, people rushing. But for Ethan and Sarah, the world felt different now. They had survived a small trial and emerged with a bond that felt electric. Sarah suggested, her eyes shining with possibility. "You read my mind," Ethan grinned. As they walked side by side down the street, laughter and conversations flowed effortlessly. The sun shone down on them, illuminating the path ahead. In that moment, life unfolded like a story waiting to be told, their hearts interwoven with threads of experiences that could not be unwound. And just like that, their journey began together. The elevator doors were just about to close when Daniel made a split-second decision. Just in time, a woman hustled up, her dark hair swirling around her shoulders. She slipped inside, her briefcase nearly falling from her grasp as she caught her breath. She gasped, a hint of relief in her voice. "No problem," Daniel replied, giving her a small smile, though inside, his stomach churned with nerves. He had an important meeting himself, the kind that could propel his career to a whole new level. The elevator hummed softly, and he quickly pressed the button for the 10th floor, feeling a jolt of electricity in the air between them. As the elevator began its ascent, Daniel stole a glance at her. She was beautiful, dressed in a sleek business suit that fit her perfectly. There was a determined look in her eyes, and for a moment he wondered who she was meeting and what kind of presentation she was about to make. He asked, trying to keep the conversation light. 10, she answered, matching his gaze with a spark of curiosity. "Just like you." Their eyes locked for a brief moment, and Daniel felt a warmth spread through him. But that warmth was quickly overshadowed by the elevator grinding to a halt, the lights flickering ominously above them. Sarah asked, glancing around. "No, I don't think so," Daniel replied, feeling a jolt of panic. The elevator gave another shudder, as if it couldn't decide whether to ascend or descend. There was something unsettling about being trapped in a confined space, and both of them could feel it. Just as Daniel tried to calm his racing heart, a voice crackled through the intercom. "This is elevator service. We're working on the issue." Calm. The word felt heavy in the air, teetering between irony and frustration. Sarah joked, though there was a tremor in her voice that betrayed her facade. "Let's not think that way," Daniel said, forcing a smile. Another moment of silence stretched between them. Daniel could feel the oppressive weight of the situation. Being stuck in an elevator could easily send someone spiraling, and he was aware that fear could tie knots in anyone's stomach. But something about Sarah's presence soothed some of that tension. Daniel asked, eager to shift the energy. "Oh, it's a presentation for a new marketing campaign." There was a flicker of pride in her eyes. "You will," he said confidently, somehow believing it. Her smile brightened. "Thanks." They exchanged glances, and for a moment felt like they were not just two people trapped in a malfunctioning elevator, but kindred spirits bound by their ambitions. Then the elevator lurched again, the lights plunging them into semi-darkness, and Daniel's stomach flipped. "We really need to get out of here," Sarah said, her calm facade cracking. "Yeah," Daniel replied, trying harder to sound composed. "I thought I'd have time to prepare. I didn't plan on." Suddenly, the elevator gave a violent jolt, and with a loud clank, it came to a complete stop. Panic washed over them, suffocating the space. Daniel reached for Sarah's hand, almost instinctively, offering a silent assurance. Their eyes met, and he saw uncertainty mirrored in her gaze. She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm sure they will," Daniel promised, though he felt just as uncertain. Minutes dragged by in silence, time stretching unnaturally in that small space. The emergency lights flickered, barely illuminating the stark metal walls. The reality of their situation began to sink in. Were they stranded, trapped? The whole world felt like it was passing them by outside while they were stuck in limbo. What if I don't make it to my meeting? This could be a huge opportunity, Sarah said suddenly, her voice trembling. Daniel echoed, frustration bubbling. Do you think this elevator knows how important our careers are? She chuckled, the sound a mix of disbelief and humor. I guess you're right. Just then, a soft beep sounded from the intercom. Please remain calm. Great. That's what they told us 5 minutes ago, Sarah replied, crossing her arms defiantly. And then, as if on cue, the elevator lurched again, this time with a loud grinding noise that rattled them. Daniel held his breath, feeling like his heart might explode, but they were still stuck. Okay, this is officially absurd, Sarah said, exhaling sharply. No one is judging you, Daniel said quickly, but hey, let's take it one step at a time. Right, she said, her voice steadier now. Outside the elevator, he could hear distant voices and the shuffling of feet. It felt like 1,000 people were waiting for them, but their world had become this steel box. Daniel realized then that the unfolding drama was an unexpected mirror of their own lives, a reminder that sometimes chaos shows you what really matters. Just then, the elevator jolted one last time and the lights blinked back to full brightness, but they stayed still, the doors refusing to budge. The promise of freedom taunted them. Sarah asked, leaning towards the door, anxiety etching lines on her forehead. I think so, just hang in there, Daniel reassured her yet again. And then, without warning, the doors creaked open slightly. A flood of brilliant light poured in, silhouetting the faces of two people who looked both concerned and frantic. One of them was a man in a crisp suit tall, with a serious expression on his face. He asked, sounding a mix of worried and annoyed. Yes, Sarah responded, her voice filled with urgency. The man exchanged a quick glance with his cohort, who was clearly the building manager. She stepped forward, her expression softening as she surveyed the situation. We're so sorry for the inconvenience. This has never happened before, Daniel replied, frustration bubbling over. The man in the suit jumped in. I'll make sure this gets sorted out. It's completely unacceptable. Thanks for the sentiment, Sarah said, her voice steadying. But you know what? This pressure, it's temporary. Daniel glanced over at her, impressed by her composure amidst chaos. There was something about her spirit that resonated within him, something they shared in that moment. The building manager cleared her throat gently. I will be following up with both of you regarding your experiences here. And I promise this will not be forgotten. Appreciate it, Daniel said, surprising himself. His frustration was fading as a feeling of resolve began to grow. As they stepped out of the elevator, sunlight and sounds washed over them like a cleansing wave. The world outside seemed vibrant, brushing away the shadows cast within the metal walls. They could feel the pulse of the city, each heartbeat a reminder that life went on. Understatement of the year, Daniel replied, grinning. They stood there, their initial urgency replaced by an invigorating sense of freedom. It no longer felt awkward to be standing next to her. Instead, there was an unspoken connection sparked by the shared experience. Daniel asked, sensing the change in atmosphere. Yes, absolutely. Her confidence was infectious. Good, you're ready for this, he encouraged, finding strength in her resolve. With a deep breath, Sarah turned to face him fully. Thank you for being so calm in there. It was mutual. You helped me too, he confessed, feeling the weight of their experience drawing them closer. A moment of silence lingered, charged with something unspoken. She suggested, eyes sparkling with hope. Sure, I'd love that, Daniel replied, feeling a surge of excitement bubble inside him. They exchanged numbers, and it felt like sealing a promise and agreement that this chaotic day would lead to something new, something promising. Just then, the lobby manager approached them again. Thank you for your patience today. We appreciate your understanding. Of course, Sarah responded, her demeanor more relaxed now. The manager smiled warmly, and with that, they stepped outside into the bustling city, the sun warm on their faces. The sound of car horns and chatter filled the air, and the world felt bright and full of possibilities. As they walked side by side, the adrenaline of their earlier ordeal faded into shared laughter and conversation. They discovered common interests: music, movies, the exhilaration of chasing dreams. Every challenge we face teaches us something, Daniel said as they strolled. True, maybe it's time we embrace the chaos instead of running from it, Sarah said, glancing up at him with that same spark in her eyes. And in that moment, they didn't just step out of the elevator. They stepped into a new chapter of their lives, bound by shared experiences and the uncharted possibility ahead. No longer just two strangers caught in an unforeseen circumstance, they were now allies, ready to face whatever the world threw at them. The elevator ride, as chaotic as it was, became a turning point, a reminder that resilience could be born in the most unexpected places. As they exchanged stories and dreams, they walked into their futures, not as isolated individuals navigating the chaotic currents of life, but as partners forged in the fires of unexpected trials. Together, they embraced the uncertainty, ready to transform it into a beautiful adventure. The elevator doors were about to close when Jake, a hustling young man, spotted her rushing down the corridor, her heels clicking furiously against the polished marble floor. He pressed the open button without thinking, feeling an unexpected urge to hold the door for her. She called out just as the doors began to slide shut. Clutching her designer handbag, she slipped inside, breathless and grateful. Thank you so much, I really thought I'd miss it, she said, her eyes wide with relief. No worries, Jake replied, taking a moment to appreciate the fleeting connection. She was stunning, with vibrant brown hair cascading down her shoulders and determination etched on her face. She asked, adjusting her handbag nervously. Yeah, I've got an interview with the marketing team, Jake said, trying to hide the knots of anxiety tightening in his gut. Same, I'm Jessica, I hope we both make it through this chaos alive, she laughed, but there was a hint of nerves behind her smile. The elevator hummed softly, and just as they exchanged hopeful glances, it jolted to a sudden stop. The lights flickered and then dimmed, leaving them in a dull glow. What the Jake started, but before he could finish, the atmosphere shifted. He could see the edge of fear creeping into Jessica's eyes. She asked, her voice slightly shaky. Not usually, Jake admitted. He pressed the buttons frantically, but nothing happened. The elevator remained stubbornly still, encased in silence. A nervous energy buzzed around them. Jake felt a cold sweat break out on his forehead. The hum of daily life outside faded into an eerie stillness. They were trapped, suspended in a fragile moment that felt heavier with each passing second. Great, just great, Jessica muttered under her breath, running a hand through her hair. Hey, Jake said, unsure of how to alleviate her mounting anxiety. Just breathe. She nodded but didn't look convinced. The seconds stretched like hours. He couldn't shake the feeling that time was twisting into something dark. Jessica's voice quivered. I get it, Jake replied, his heart racing. She glanced at him, vulnerability piercing through her worry. True, he said, admiring her fierce determination, now laced with fear. Then, almost instantly, the elevator lurched, sending a chill of unease through both of them. The overhead lights flickered again. Jessica stated, her voice edged with frustration. Looks like it, Jake replied, trying to keep his own nerves in check. I just can't believe this is happening, she sighed. Sometimes technology fails us, he said, thinking of the unpredictability of life. But even as he spoke those words, doubts clouded his mind. Jessica said, a quiver in her voice. Let's not go down that path, Jake urged, trying to keep her grounded. She took a deep breath, flipping her hair behind her shoulder. It's a new social media strategy aimed at millennials, an interactive campaign that connects brands with users in real time. He prodded, sensing there was more beneath her confident exterior. I'm not sure where that would leave me, Jessica admitted, her eyes briefly meeting his. I've put everything into this. Hey, Jake said, meeting her gaze. Whatever happens in that meeting, know that you've already shown resilience today. Thanks, she smiled weakly, but her brow remained furrowed, worry lines deepening as the atmosphere grew heavier. Suddenly, the elevator lurched again, and there was another crackling voice over the intercom. We are experiencing technical difficulties. Great, Jessica scoffed, rolling her eyes. Look, it might take some time, but they're aware of us, Jake reassured her as his heart began to pound harder. Minutes dragged on, and every silence swelled with tension. As each second felt like an eternity, he became painfully aware of how much he wanted to help her. So tell me more about that campaign, he said, trying to shift the focus away from their claustrophobic surroundings. Her eyes lit up, momentarily breaking through the fear. Well, it's about creating a personalized experience. Absolutely, Jake nodded, intrigued. It's all about engagement. We want people to feel like the brands are speaking directly to them. Her passion shone through, and his heart warmed to her spirit. Now that sounds like a winning idea, he said, genuinely impressed. I've been working on it for months, Jessica continued, her confidence slowly bubbling back to the surface. Then you will, Jake said, determination alight in his chest. A soft smile crossed Jessica's lips, and for a fleeting moment they were two souls determined to push through the chaos together. Their moment was interrupted by another jolt, the elevator clanking one last time as the lights flickered back on and the doors creaked open. Bright artificial light flooded in, revealing a small crowd of curious faces staring at them. A middle-aged woman in a business suit asked, her eyes filled with concern. Yes, Jessica exclaimed, her relief palpable. Jake added. The woman nodded, her expression shifting from worry to determination. I'm really sorry about this. I'm the building manager, and this is not how we want our employees to feel. Another man stepped forward, his face pale with concern. Is everyone okay? We saw you stuck and just frustrated. Jessica cut him off, her voice steadier now. Fine doesn't cut it. We need to ensure this never happens again, the manager replied, her tone now sharp with authority. Jessica opened her mouth to respond, but found that she could only nod. The atmosphere shifted. Their shared ordeal had become more than just a moment in time. Thank you, Jake addressed the manager. In fact, the manager continued, her voice steady, we'll be conducting a thorough review of the elevator systems to ensure this doesn't happen again. Plus, I owe you both an apology. Jake felt a wave of gratitude wash over him. Instead of dismissing them, the manager recognized the gravity of the situation. As they stepped out of the elevator, sunlight streamed in through the tall glass windows, spilling warmth around them. That was quite the experience, Jessica remarked, her laughter brightening the air. What's next? They stepped out into the bustling lobby filled with people moving about, laughter echoing off the walls. Jake suggested, feeling emboldened by their shared experience. Only if you promise to help me rehearse my presentation, she shot back, a playful glimmer in her eyes. Deal, Jake said, feeling a spark of excitement. As they walked toward the cafe, the conversation flowed easily between them. Jessica spoke about her plans, her passion owning the space around them as if nothing else mattered in the world. I just want this chance to prove I can do this, she said, her eyes shining with determination. You will. You've got the drive, he replied, admiration creeping into his tone. They reached the cafe, which buzzed with energy, and Jake felt a sense of warmth settle over him. They found a small table in the corner, and as they sipped their coffee, laughter mingled with aspirations filled the air. Okay, let's go through your pitch, Jake said, leaning in earnestly. He helped her refine her ideas, and as she spoke, her confidence soared. With each word, he could see her taking center stage, ready to own the room. But there was something else simmering below the surface. Amidst the chaos of that elevator, Jake had found a spark of connection woven tightly into the fabric of their moment together, something that transcended mere chance. Before long, their coffees were empty, and the sun cast long shadows across the cafe. Jessica leaned back in her chair, looking reflective. Thank you for everything today. Same here, Jake replied. The sincerity hung thick between them. You're not just someone I met in an elevator. She smiled, and he couldn't help but feel that strong connection once more. After today, I think I'm ready to face whatever comes my way. No matter what happens in that meeting, I know I can handle it, Jessica said, her voice solid and unwavering. You've got this, Jake assured her. As they walked back to the building, adrenaline surged through him. He declared, grinning. Together, Jessica echoed, her cheer infectious. They stepped back into the high-rise, the energy around them buzzing with anticipation. Every heartbeat felt synchronized, every breath shared an unspoken promise. Here's to opportunities, Jake said, raising an imaginary glass. Jessica laughed, her spirit alight with passion. As they reached the conference room door, they paused, standing shoulder to shoulder. The world outside faded into the background, leaving only the drive that brought them together. I know you're going to shine, he said firmly. Thanks to you, she replied, the warmth in her gaze lingering. And as she turned to enter the room, they both felt it, the steady heartbeat remaining between them, drawn together by chance and fate. In that moment, a promise lingered in the air, binding their paths, forever altered by one small act of holding an elevator door. Jake stepped back, watching her walk into the unknown, her presence igniting the room. He had known her for only hours, yet in that time they had transformed a moment of chaos into an unbreakable bond. And with that spark, anything felt possible. A connection formed in the unlikeliest of places, vibrant and full of potential, waiting to unfold in ways neither of them could have ever expected. Through the chaos, they had both found a way to rise. The elevator doors sighed open, and David, glancing at his watch, muttered a quiet prayer for mercy. He was already running late for a meeting that could redefine his career. Just as he pressed the button for the 20th floor, a woman rushed in, the breathless kind of rush where every second counted. She exclaimed, her voice laced with urgency as she nearly dropped her portfolio in her haste. Not a problem, David replied, flashing a quick smile. She was stunning, with dark hair shimmering under the elevator lights, her expression a blend of determination and anxiety. He asked, trying to ease the tension that thickened the air. 20, she said, a small frown creasing her brow. Same here, he admitted, feeling a spark of kinship. I'm David. I'm Sophia, she replied, her eyes lighting up momentarily with hope. Just then the elevator lurched and his stomach dropped. Whoa, David said, grabbing the railing to steady himself. Before they could grasp what was unfolding, the lights flickered and then went out, plunging them into an unexpected darkness. Panic rippled through the small space as they both realized they were trapped. Sophia whispered, her voice trembling slightly. No, David replied, holding back the rising tide of anxiety that threatened to engulf him. A beat of silence hung between them, thick and heavy. The sound of their hearts echoed in the confined space. David pressed the buttons again and again, but nothing happened. Outside the walls of the elevator, he could hear the hustle and bustle of people going about their day, unaware of the small crisis unfolding inside. Sophia's voice was a mixture of fear and frustration. I know it feels dire, but panicking won't help us, David said, trying to sound more confident than he felt. They'll get us out. Right, she replied, but the uncertainty lingered in her eyes. But what if they don't? David could almost feel her panic radiating off her, and he wished he could ease her worries. Let's focus on what you're going to say in your presentation. She nodded, taking a deep breath. Yeah, I've spent weeks getting this ready. That sounds exciting. You'll blow them away, he encouraged, trying to draw her focus away from the claustrophobia surrounding them. Sophia's passion ignited in her voice as she elaborated on her ideas, her eyes brightening as she spoke about engagement strategies and consumer psychology. The way she brought her concepts to life is what grabbed David's attention. Her enthusiasm was contagious. But while she took the lead, David sneaked glances at the flickering emergency lights, feeling the tension grow heavier with every passing moment. He could hear distant chatter from the lobby, people moving about, completely oblivious to the two souls suspended in metal. Minutes crawled by, or perhaps it was just the darkness playing tricks on their perception of time. Suddenly the elevator jerked, jerking them back to the present, but the doors remained firmly shut. Sophia murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. We have to stay calm, David reassured her, although his own heart was racing. Just then, a voice crackled over the intercom. We are currently experiencing a technical issue. Sophia scoffed, her eyes fierce. Trust me, I want to be out of here too, but you've got to keep your cool. It'll be over soon, he said, hoping to keep the words flowing. She turned to him, her expression softening, and for the first time he saw the vulnerability beneath her determined facade. David could sense the weight of her question. Then we make the best of it, he said thoughtfully. Fine, she said, her resolve returning. She began describing her vision more passionately, her worries fading for a moment. But then, as the elevator creaked ominously, a dreadful feeling settled in David's stomach. Just then, another loud grinding noise filled the air. It flickered and buzzed, and the elevator dropped slightly before coming to yet another abrupt halt. Sophia's voice was laced with panic once again. Let's not make assumptions, David offered, though he was beginning to feel overwhelmed. She nodded, but the anxiety flickered in her eyes again. I hear they're good for the heart, David said, trying to make her smile. She chuckled softly, but then looked intently at him as if searching for something more. Sophia's uncertainty crept back as she spoke. I believe in you, he said firmly, locking his gaze with hers. You've got the talent to back it up. The look in her eyes shifted, and for a moment they shared an understanding deeper than words. The chaotic world outside faded as they faced their confined reality. They exchanged stories as the minutes melted into more uncomfortable silence. Every shared laugh felt like a lifeline, something more potent than just fleeting niceties. Their bond deepened. Suddenly, there was another crackle from the intercom. Attention, we are aware of the situation and are working to resolve it, Sophia said, rolling her eyes. Look, David said earnestly, regardless of what's going on outside, we're here now. We have to focus on the present. Sophia let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. Fate continued to play with their fate, wrenching them further into the unpredictable tapestry of life. Then the elevator shook slightly again, and this time it was accompanied by what sounded like machinery grinding against machinery. And without warning, the door screeched and swung open, spilling bright light into the dim space. Two figures stood silhouetted against the harsh glare. One was a maintenance worker, the other a suited man who appeared to be the building's manager. The manager's voice rang out, filled with undeniable authority. David and Sophia said in unison, relief flooding through them. The maintenance worker frowned, brushing a bead of sweat from his forehead. We're so sorry for the trouble. The building manager lined in, his expression serious. I apologize for this inconvenience and for leaving you without information. Sophia glanced at David, her expression a mix of surprise and gratitude. Thank you for coming. It's unacceptable, the manager asserted. I will ensure this matter is addressed immediately. Everyone has rough days, I get it, Sophia said, her tension dissipating. David couldn't help but chuckle. A glimmer of resilience sparked in Sophia's demeanor, and the manager nodded in agreement. It was evident that they were both taking a moment to breathe and regroup. As they stepped out of the elevator, sunlight poured in, illuminating the lobby that they had temporarily forgotten. David felt the weight of the small ordeal lift off his shoulders, and for a moment it felt like a rebirth, like stepping back into the world after emerging from darkness. Sophia commented, shaking her head in disbelief. David laughed, and Sophia joined him, laughter echoing in the bright space. When they separated in the lobby, a sense of electricity lingered. What's next? You've got a pitch to nail, David said, his heart racing again, but not from anxiety this time. Right. Couldn't have made it through without your support in there, she said, her voice genuine and warm. Just remember all that passion you have. Use it, David replied, feeling a surge of pride for her. They were strangers no longer, united by the unexpected events of the day. I will, she said, holding his gaze for a moment longer, a smile dancing on her lips. Want to meet up later? I'd love that, he said, hope blooming inside him. As they exchanged numbers, the moment felt electric. Their connection deepened, almost stitched together by the shared experience, and for the first time it felt like anything could happen. Here's to new beginnings, David said, raising an invisible cup. And to surviving elevators, Sophia laughed. They parted ways, both stepping into the unknown ahead, feeling the warmth of the day wrap around them like a comforting embrace. David's heart rushed, thinking about the promises contained in her eyes. The sun bathed the streets as he turned to head to his own meeting, thoughts racing. Later that afternoon, while waiting for his turn, David overheard snippets of conversations from around the office. The stories flowed, filled with ambition and excitement as people flourished in their roles. That energy electrified him, and he couldn't shake the thrill of meeting Sophia. In that moment, tucked away at the edge of the crowd, whispers filled the air and carried possibility. While he went into his meeting room, the thoughts of Sophia lingered in his mind, her laughter echoing like a memorable melody, a reminder of connection in a fragmented world. Each heartbeat felt syncopated, waiting for something more. When his interview began, he spoke with passion, mirroring the dynamic spirit he had shared earlier with Sophia in the elevator. The energy flowed through him, pulsing with enthusiasm as he discussed his visions for the company. Afterward, feeling empowered, David stepped away feeling good about his performance. He realized that this was more than just an opportunity. He'd stepped forward, taking a chance on himself. That evening, they met up at a nearby cafe where laughter flowed freely like the coffee. As they recounted their day, a sense of camaraderie threw them both deeper into conversation, and for once, neither was afraid of time ticking by. Sophia asked, her eyes gleaming. "I'm going to keep pushing toward my goals and maybe explore more connections in the business," David replied. They exchanged ideas, bouncing off each other's dreams until the sun dipped below the horizon, wrapping them in the soft glow of twilight. "You know, being trapped in that elevator might have been the best thing that ever happened to us," Sophia mused, her gaze resting on him, a soft smile ghosting her lips. David nodded, feeling the warmth swirl between them. In the soft light, the world outside faded, and David realized that the true journey had only just begun. Through chaos and uncertainty, they had risen together, weaving a story that was still being written, filled with untold potential. They both knew the bonds they forged in the elevator, the fear, the laughter, the shared dreams, would linger on, grounding them in their shared future. The elevator doors sighed open, and David, glancing at his watch, muttered a quiet prayer for mercy. He was already running late for a meeting that could redefine his career. Just as he pressed the button for the 20th floor, a woman rushed in, the breathless kind of rush where every second counted. She exclaimed, her voice laced with urgency as she nearly dropped her portfolio in her haste. "Not a problem," David replied, flashing a quick smile. She was stunning, with dark hair shimmering under the elevator lights, her expression a blend of determination and anxiety. He asked, trying to ease the tension that thickened the air. 20, she said, a small frown creasing her brow. "Same here," he admitted, feeling a spark of kinship. "I'm David." "I'm Sophia," she replied, her eyes lighting up momentarily with hope. Just then the elevator lurched and his stomach dropped. "Whoa," David said, grabbing the railing to steady himself. Before they could grasp what was unfolding, the lights flickered and then went out, plunging them into an unexpected darkness. Panic rippled through the small space as they both realized they were trapped. Sophia whispered, her voice trembling slightly. "No," David replied, holding back the rising tide of anxiety that threatened to engulf him. A beat of silence hung between them, thick and heavy. The sound of their hearts echoed in the confined space. David pressed the buttons again and again, but nothing happened. Outside the walls of the elevator, he could hear the hustle and bustle of people going about their day, unaware of the small crisis unfolding inside. Sophia's voice was a mixture of fear and frustration. "I know it feels dire, but panicking won't help us," David said, trying to sound more confident than he felt. "They'll get us out." "Right," she replied, but the uncertainty lingered in her eyes. "But what if they don't?" David could almost feel her panic radiating off her, and he wished he could ease her worries. "Let's focus on what you're going to say in your presentation." She nodded, taking a deep breath. "Yeah, I've spent weeks getting this ready." "That sounds exciting. You'll blow them away," he encouraged, trying to draw her focus away from the claustrophobia surrounding them. Sophia's passion ignited in her voice as she elaborated on her ideas, her eyes brightening as she spoke about engagement strategies and consumer psychology. The way she brought her concepts to life is what grabbed David's attention. Her enthusiasm was contagious. But while she took the lead, David sneaked glances at the flickering emergency lights, feeling the tension grow heavier with every passing moment. He could hear distant chatter from the lobby, people moving about, completely oblivious to the two souls suspended in metal. Minutes crawled by, or perhaps it was just the darkness playing tricks on their perception of time. Suddenly the elevator jerked, jerking them back to the present, but the doors remained firmly shut. Sophia murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. "We have to stay calm," David reassured her, although his own heart was racing. Just then a voice crackled over the intercom. "We are currently experiencing a technical issue." Sophia scoffed, her eyes fierce. "Trust me, I want to be out of here too, but you've got to keep your cool. It'll be over soon," he said, hoping to keep the words flowing. She turned to him, her expression softening, and for the first time he saw the vulnerability beneath her determined facade. David could sense the weight of her question. "Then we make the best of it," he said thoughtfully. "Fine," she said, her resolve returning. She began describing her vision more passionately, her worries fading for a moment. But then, as the elevator creaked ominously, a dreadful feeling settled in David's stomach. Just then, another loud grinding noise filled the air. It flickered and buzzed, and the elevator dropped slightly before coming to yet another abrupt halt. Sophia's voice was laced with panic once again. "Let's not make assumptions," David offered, though he was beginning to feel overwhelmed. She nodded, but the anxiety flickered in her eyes again. "I hear they're good for the heart," David said, trying to make her smile. She chuckled softly, but then looked intently at him as if searching for something more. Sophia's uncertainty crept back as she spoke. "I believe in you," he said firmly, locking his gaze with hers. "You've got the talent to back it up." The look in her eyes shifted, and for a moment they shared an understanding deeper than words. The chaotic world outside faded as they faced their confined reality. They exchanged stories as the minutes melted into more uncomfortable silence. Every shared laugh felt like a lifeline, something more potent than just fleeting niceties. Their bond deepened. Suddenly, there was another crackle from the intercom. "Attention, we are aware of the situation and are working to resolve it," Sophia said, rolling her eyes. "Look," David said earnestly, "regardless of what's going on outside, we're here now. We have to focus on the present." Sophia let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. Fate continued to play with their fate, wrenching them further into the unpredictable tapestry of life. Then the elevator shook slightly again, and this time it was accompanied by what sounded like machinery grinding against machinery. And without warning, the doors screeched and swung open, spilling bright light into the dim space. Two figures stood silhouetted against the harsh glare. One was a maintenance worker, the other a suited man who appeared to be the building's manager. The manager's voice rang out, filled with undeniable authority. David and Sophia said in unison, relief flooding through them. The maintenance worker frowned, brushing a bead of sweat from his forehead. "We're so sorry for the trouble." The building manager lined in, his expression serious. "I apologize for this inconvenience and for leaving you without information." Sophia glanced at David, her expression a mix of surprise and gratitude. "Thank you for coming. It's unacceptable," the manager asserted. "I will ensure this matter is addressed immediately. Everyone has rough days, I get it," Sophia said, her tension dissipating. David couldn't help but chuckle. A glimmer of resilience sparked in Sophia's demeanor, and the manager nodded in agreement. It was evident that they were both taking a moment to breathe and regroup. As they stepped out of the elevator, sunlight poured in, illuminating the lobby that they had temporarily forgotten. David felt the weight of the small ordeal lift off his shoulders, and for a moment it felt like a rebirth, like stepping back into the world after emerging from darkness. Sophia remarked, shaking her head in disbelief. David laughed, and Sophia joined him, laughter echoing in the bright space. When they separated in the lobby, a sense of electricity lingered. "What's next? You've got a pitch to nail," David said, his heart racing again, but not from anxiety this time. "Right. And I couldn't have made it through without your support in there," she said, her voice genuine and warm. "Just remember all that passion you have. Use it," David replied, feeling a surge of pride for her. They were strangers no longer, united by the unexpected events of the day. "I will," she said, holding his gaze for a moment longer, a smile dancing on her lips. And as she turned to enter the room, they both felt it, the steady heartbeat remaining between them, drawn together by chance and fate. In that moment, a promise lingered in the air, binding their paths forever altered by one small act of holding an elevator door. David stepped back, watching her walk into the unknown, her presence igniting the room. He had known her for only hours, yet in that time they had transformed a moment of chaos into something meaningful, and with that spark, anything felt possible. A connection formed in the unlikeliest of places, vibrant and full of potential, waiting to unfold in ways neither of them could have ever expected. Through the chaos, they had both found a way to rise. The elevator doors were about to slide shut when Ethan noticed her sprinting toward the entrance. Time seemed to stretch as he instinctively pressed the open button. She called, breathless, just as the doors halted, and he felt a jolt of adrenaline. He said, stepping back. She rushed inside, her dark hair swirling around her face. She exclaimed, eyes wide with relief. "No problem at all," Ethan replied, stealing a glance at her. She had a polished look, sharp business attire that complemented her confidence. He could see clarity in her eyes, but also nervousness shimmering beneath the surface. He asked, shifting the focus away from the pulse of his own racing heart. 20, she said, glancing at the buttons. "I'm Jane, by the way." "Ethan," he introduced himself. "I'm in the same boat." As the elevator began to ascend, their routine chatter melted the tension in the air. But suddenly the lights above flickered ominously. The elevator jolted violently, then came to an abrupt stop. Jane asked, her voice sharp with uncertainty. "Not good," Ethan replied, an icy wave of panic swirling through him. He pressed the buttons frantically, but nothing happened. "Great," Jane said, running a hand through her hair. "Let's just breathe," Ethan urged, trying to control his own rising anxiety. The small space suddenly felt like a cage, limiting their air and freedom. Outside, he could hear the faint rustle of people in the lobby, oblivious to the moment of chaos unfolding within the metal box. She asked, glancing toward the doors, her expression filled with concern. "I hope so. They can't just leave us like this," he reassured her, though doubts gnawed at him. Minutes passed, or maybe they just felt like hours. The two of them stood there, trapped in a moment of time that kept ticking away. The looming weight of their situations kept pulling them down, and Ethan's heart ached at the thought of Jane missing her pitch. "I really need this," she murmured, staring at the doors as if they somehow held the answers. "I understand," Ethan said, his mind racing. "Just focus on what you've prepared." "Sure, if I could just get out of here," she replied, dismay evident in her tone. "Even if we are stuck, we can still prepare for the meeting," Ethan suggested, desperation driving him to keep her spirits up. Jane straightened a bit, the passion flickering back. "That sounds exciting," Ethan said, his enthusiasm genuine. She launched into her pitch, her voice rising with a blend of excitement and urgency. Her passion filled the small elevator as she explained her vision how brands could create authentic connections. And just like that, the tension around them began to ease. Their shared focus, coupled with the energy radiating from Jane, pulled Ethan from the clutches of panic. He quietly admired how she managed to stay composed, even when faced with uncertainty. But the feeling of being trapped remained heavy. Just then, the elevator lurched again, sending a quiver of fear through both of them. Jane asked, stepping back instinctively. "I don't know, but let's just keep talking," Ethan said, feeling a protective instinct awaken within him. Jane dove back into her ideas, intertwining facts with her personal perspective. As she spoke, the intimacy forged by their shared uncertainty allowed her passion to shine brighter. Each word she shared drew Ethan deeper into her world, where everything felt possible. Another set of tense minutes dragged by, and as the heat in the small space became oppressive, Ethan felt suffocated. Just then, a crackling sound surged from the intercom. "We are experiencing technical difficulties," she exclaimed incredulously. "I know it's frustrating," he admitted. "Yeah, I wanted to blow them away today," she said softly, anxiety creeping back into her voice. "Hey, it's not over yet," Ethan said, locking eyes with her. "You still can." She gave him a grateful nod, resilience flickering back into her eyes. "Thanks for being here." "Neither did I, but here we are. Just keep that fire alive," he encouraged, feeling a spark of camaraderie as they bonded further in the face of adversity. Outside the elevator, voices mingled with the beeping intercom, creating a background noise that felt distant yet terrifyingly close. With every passing second, Ethan felt a sense of urgency growing, not just for himself but for Jane. Suddenly, the elevator rattled ominously, shaking violently. She joked nervously, her laugh doing little to mask her fear. "Let's hope this doesn't become a horror movie," Ethan replied with a smile, trying to keep her spirits high. But as they exchanged glances, he felt the gravity of the situation looming heavily upon them. Jane asked, her voice now thick with apprehension. "I believe we will," he said, though doubt whispered in his mind. "Just focus on your pitch." "Yeah. I need to remember that," she said quietly, her shoulders relaxing slightly as their eyes met. "Let's brainstorm." As they tossed ideas around, the weight of the moment shifted. The elevator became a pocket of hope, a place where futures could still be rewritten, even in its stillness. Jane spoke animatedly, and with each passing idea, Ethan felt the tension coiling in his chest loosen. Then, with a sudden jarring noise, the elevator ground to a halt again. The emergency lights flickered, and they stood frozen for a moment, eyes wide as something outside shifted. In that moment of suspended disbelief, Jane looked at him with a mix of anxiety and desperation. "What if this is it? You can and you will," Ethan promised, feeling emboldened by the intensity of her gaze. Just then, the elevator doors creaked open, surprising them both. The bright light filled the small space, exposing the startled faces of two men standing in the doorway, one in a crisp suit and the other in a maintenance uniform, both looking concerned. The suited man asked, his voice serious but laced with urgency. They both replied, relief flooding through them. "We heard you were stuck. I'm the building manager. We are so sorry for the delay," he continued, stepping forward. Jane exhaled in relief while Ethan's heart raced. They were finally free. "Your safety is our top priority," the maintenance worker said, clearly relieved as he began to assess the situation. "I can't express how sorry we are for this mix-up." "I appreciate that," Jane said, her voice steadier now, though traces of lingering fear remained. As they stepped out of the elevator into the bustling lobby, the sunlight poured over them, and the energy of the day rushed back in. The gravity of their earlier ordeal began to lift, and Jane turned to David, a smile breaking through her earlier tension. She laughed, her eyes sparkling with a newfound sense of freedom. "I think we deserve an award for elevator survival," Ethan joked, mirroring her enthusiasm. "After that, I'm pretty sure I can handle anything in that meeting," Jane said confidently, her spirit rekindled. "You were amazing in there," he replied, sensing the connection between them solidifying. "Me neither," she admitted, her expression softening. As they began to separate, an undeniable tension lingered in the air. Ethan asked, leaning in slightly. "I think I am. Besides, I've got an ally now," she smiled, the warmth emanating from her eyes. "I'll be cheering you on from afar," he said, deciding at that moment that he wanted to remain part of her journey, however briefly. "Let's connect later to celebrate after the meeting," she suggested, her enthusiasm infectious. "I'd like that," Ethan replied, feeling a wave of optimism wash over him. They exchanged numbers, and just like that, what had begun as a chance encounter became something more. As she turned to make her way to the meeting room, they exchanged glances once more, an unspoken understanding now threading them together. As Jane stepped forward, Ethan felt an unexpected rush, an undeniable connection sparked by circumstance. It was a feeling that transcended simple moments, intertwining near misses and serendipitous encounters. He watched her disappear down the hall, the weight of the elevator incident receding, replaced with hope and excitement. Walking back to his own responsibilities, Ethan felt buoyant and empowered, the energy between them still crackling. In the days that followed, they texted back and forth, their initial meeting blossoming into something deeper. Jane landed her dream job, and Ethan found himself inspired by her achievements. Though they were both navigating individual paths, the connection they made that day became a constant reminder, the kind of connection that often is born from shared experiences, even in unexpected circumstances. Days turned into weeks, and their coffee dates became frequent, each conversation more lively than the last. They shared their hopes, fears, and dreams, unveiling layers of themselves that surprised them both. Then came the phone call, the one that would root the two of them firmly in reality. Jane had earned her place on a team that was much grander than she'd ever imagined. Ethan felt a swell of pride as she relayed the news to him. "I couldn't have done it without you," she said, her voice shimmering with excitement. Ethan smiled, feeling the thread of their bond tighten with every shared moment. In the glow of that late afternoon sun, sitting across from each other at their favorite cafe, they realized they had created something more than friendship. They had fostered genuine support through uncertainty growing amidst the chaos of unexpected moments. As time passed, their bond continued to deepen, emerging stronger and more vibrant than they had envisioned that day in the elevator. Through the twists and turns of life, they leaned into one another, their connection becoming a compass guiding them forward. And just like that, they both built lives intertwined, electrified, and supported by a serendipitous meeting that began with a simple decision to hold the elevator door open. The world felt full of incredible possibilities, glimmering like sunlight reflecting off fresh rain. They had discovered something rare amidst the ordinary, a partnership ignited by chance, sealed through faith in their shared journey. The elevator doors slid shut, but not before Mark caught a glimpse of a flustered woman rushing toward him. Instinctively, he pressed the open button, and the doors slid back just in time for her to squeeze in. "Thank you." "I thought I was going to miss it," she gasped, her chest rising and falling quickly as she nervously adjusted her glasses, strands of hair escaping her ponytail. "No problem," Mark replied, glancing at her. There was something endearing about her disheveled appearance. 14, she replied, brushing a few loose strands behind her ear, her cheeks flushed with urgency. "Good luck, I've got a big presentation on the same floor," he said, feeling a flicker of connection ignite between them. "Really?" she asked, her eyes lighting up with curiosity. "It's about a new marketing strategy for a tech product we're launching," he said. "After what I've seen of you so far, I have no doubt you will," she said, smiling brightly. Just then the elevator jolted and the lights flickered. Mark's heart sank as he felt the sudden stillness. The elevator ground to a halt. She asked, her voice rising in inflection, fear creeping into her tone. "I don't know," he stammered, pressing the button for the 14th floor repeatedly. "Nothing happened. Minor," she exclaimed, glancing back at the doors, her smile fading rapidly. "It's going to be fine," he assured her, though he felt his own heart pounding. He sharply exhaled. "They'll get us out." But as moments turned into minutes, the small space felt suffocating. They stood there, two strangers in a metal box, the walls closing in on them. "I can't believe this is happening right now," she muttered, crossing her arms. "Same here," Mark said, trying his best to maintain a calm demeanor even as anxiety swirled within him. "But let's stay positive." "Lily," she replied, her tone softening slightly. "I work in marketing too." As she spoke, he could tell she had a genuine passion for her work. Mark's tension eased just a little. "That sounds important," he said, genuinely interested. "Thanks." "It means a lot to me," she said, her eyes growing wider. "I've put my heart and soul into this. Whatever happens, you should be proud that you took the chance," he encouraged her. But just then the elevator made an awful grinding noise. Lily gasped, and Mark could feel the pulse of panic radiating off her. She cried, her voice echoing in the confined space. "Let's not jump to conclusions," Mark said, forcing a smile. "You'll still have a chance to win them over," she asked, the worry creeping back into her eyes. "Hey, we can brainstorm," Mark suggested, feeling a protective urge to shield her from the rising fear. Lily took a deep breath, shifting her stance. "Very timely. In this day and age, people crave connection more than ever," Mark said, impressed. As she began outlining her vision, detailing her innovative solutions, Mark felt a strange sense of calm wash over him. Time began to fade, the world outside becoming distant as they focused on a potential future beyond those metal walls. But then, without warning, the elevator shook violently. Mark braced himself against the wall as the lights flickered again. Lily yelped, panic slipping back into her voice. "Just stay close," Mark said, wishing he could do more to ease her worries. She asked incredulously. "Sometimes you have to face the chaos," he replied, taking a deep breath. She looked at him, a spark of determination igniting behind her overwhelmed expression. "What's important is that you stay focused on what matters." Just then the elevator lurched again and the lights dimmed ominously. A crackling voice came through the intercom. "Please hold tight. Please tell me they bring snacks when you're stuck in an elevator," Lily joked, her smile breaking through the fear once again. As they shared an unexpected laugh, Mark felt their connection crystallize, two souls navigating an unsettling moment by leaning into each other. But as the minutes passed and the panic outside grew louder, it became apparent that their ordeal was nowhere near an end. "I should have taken the stairs," Lily muttered, visibly frustrated. The pressure in the air felt electric, moments turning into an eternity. Even stairs can be unpredictable, Mark said, trying to lighten the mood, but even he could sense the slipping tension. He looked at his watch, anxiety clawed at him as reality loomed. Don't dwell on the what-ifs, Lily advised, her voice steadying. Another jolt rocked the elevator, and for a moment they exchanged worried glances. The uncertainty felt suffocating. Suddenly there was an intense burst of sound, the elevator rattling violently. She cried, her eyes wide with fear. Mark said, feeling an instinct to protect her, the adrenaline pumping through his veins. Then the intercom crackled again, barely audible over the noise. We are aware of the situation and working to resolve it. Lily shot back, the defiance in her voice holding strong. Stay focused, Mark urged her, his heart racing alongside hers. Charge, she said incredulously. Just as it seemed like panic would take hold, there was a sudden thud, and the elevator jolted once more before the doors eased open, casting illuminating light into the dimness. Her faces stood there, one in a crisp suit, the other in a maintenance uniform, both looking anxious yet relieved. The manager asked, his voice filled with concern. Mark and Lily shouted in unison, spilling out a breath they hadn't realized they'd been holding. We're really sorry about this, just a minor issue, the manager continued, his expression shifting from concern to urgency. Lily turned wide-eyed, glancing between them. Not until just now, one of them replied, his brow furrowing. Yeah, you really should, Lily said, a tinge of frustration still lingering in her voice. Your safety and comfort are extremely important to us, the manager asserted, the seriousness returning to his tone. Mark felt an uneasy feeling wash over him, realizing that in a way they had all been caught off guard. The world outside continued without knowing the ordeal they had just survived, and suddenly the significance of their encounter felt weightier. As they stepped out of the elevator into the bustling lobby, the energy shifted around them. The sunlight spilled down, illuminating the space and revitalizing their spirits. Lily exclaimed, her voice crackling with excitement. I half expected it to become a horror movie, Mark joked, feeling relief flood through him as they shared a laugh. As they parted ways, there was a powerful connection lingering in the space where the elevator doors had once held them captive. Mark asked, his heart racing again. I'm getting there thanks to you, she replied, the warmth shining through her eyes. Just own it and you'll do great, he said, a surge of pride swelling in his chest. As she moved toward the conference room, he watched her walk away, amazed at how a single moment of holding an elevator door could lead to this an unexpected allyship forged in urgency. Just as he was about to head to his own meeting, the lobby manager approached him with an unusually serious expression. Sure, Mark replied, his curiosity piqued. I want to personally apologize for what you experienced today, the manager said, his eyes searching Mark's. Mark nodded, the weight of their shared experience suddenly crashing back down on him. It's important to us that every employee feels safe, the manager pressed, and for a moment the air felt thick with unsaid words. Before Mark could respond, a commotion erupted from the meeting room just down the hall. Then raised voices followed, angry, urgent. Mark asked, his instincts on high alert. The manager's expression shifted to concern, drawing closer. In a flash, they turned and rushed toward the noise, heart rates escalating. As they approached the doorway, Mark could see shadows flickering inside. A heated argument was taking shape. Through the glass pane, the tension pulsed. Mark whispered, his throat tight with anxiety. I don't know, the manager replied, peering through the glass. But before anyone could react, the commotion escalated into a shrill shout, piercing the otherwise calm lobby. The door suddenly swung open, revealing a frantic scene inside. Lily's voice rang out, vibrant yet filled with desperation. Mark felt his heart drop, adrenaline surging as he realized the depth of her struggle. This wasn't just a pitch, this was her future on the line. The manager and Mark exchanged horrified glances. Mark was thrust into the heart of the storm as he witnessed Lily's fight. This was no longer just about being stuck in an elevator. He stepped forward instinctively, adrenaline refining his focus as he prepared to support her in an increasingly chaotic moment. They had fought through fear together, and he couldn't back away now. With every ounce of resolve, he pushed through the door, and the outcome hung in the balance, waiting to unravel as the scene inside shifted. Everything became a blur, but the sound of Lily's voice pierced through, and Mark was determined to stand beside her when it mattered most, ready to face whatever storm lay ahead. The atmosphere crackled, revealing the strength forged through unexpected challenges, and both of them were on the precipice of change.